to the schools before about the importance of knowing their student value and their active count. And I wanted to get just a checkpoint because, you know, our little slogan we always use, you know, you're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotting, is so tied to that. It's so tied to your net enrollment each month that I want everybody to be so aware of those numbers that they can recite those whenever I call on them at the meeting without having to even look it up. And if you need to calculate it now to get those numbers, do it. But remember, it's just your active count divided into your total gross for the month. And that's going to give you your student value. And then when you take your number of students you had at the beginning of the month, plus the enrollments you had during the month, and then you count your active count at the beginning of the following month, and you do the adding and subtraction, then you can tell what is your positive or negative enrollment. In other words, did I have more March 1st than I did February 1st? And if I did, then I had a positive net enrollment for the month. And just by subtracting one from the other, it's going to tell you what that positive is. And if you look at that each month as you go, and you look at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months of that, you're going to then be able to determine an average net enrollment. And then that's going to give you a projection of how long it's going to take you to get to that active count of 300 that we need. If you're at 215 now.
I hear you're asking for numbers.
Yes, ma'am. And hold on for just a second. Let me finish up the comments. We can hear you. Hold on for, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Sorry, Mr. Lionel had it muted.
Oh, okay. Then hold on for just a second. I'm finishing the question and then I'm going to ask on some of the numbers.
Okay,
so
thank you.
It's important for you to know what is your average growth. So you know when you're going to be at that 300. Is it going to take you 6 months at your current rate? And that current rate would be based on the last 6 months or the last 12 months of what your average net enrollment is. If your average net enrollment is only 2 or 3, you're moving pretty slow. You know, if your net enrollment is just say 10 for round numbers, then that means that you're going to have 120 more active students by the end of the year. So if you're at 200, that means you'll be at 320. You can take your average student value that you've had, you know, over the last 3 to 6 or 12 months. And that's going to then tell you what your gross projection is. You have to keep your eye on the ball. If you're not green and growing, if this month is worse than last month, then I've got to get on the stick for next month and make sure that it goes up. Now let's ask for a couple of schools that could give me what their numbers are for 1, student value, and 2, active count, and 3, what is your average net enrollment? Any volunteers? And Middleburg, I think you said you thought you had it on the top of your head there. So if you want to give it to me, I'm ready.
Yeah, we got to go get dressed.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what numbers are you asking for, sir?
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were listening.
I'm sorry. Well, our per student average is 407 right now.
Say it again.
Our per student average is 407.
Okay, so your average student value is 407.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and your active count?
293.
Okay, 293 active count, 407 student value. And what month was that from?
That was from last month, and it's still, I mean, I'm looking at it now and it's still about the same for this month.
Okay, so that's February.
Yes, sir.
What was the gross for February?
It was 118.
Okay, 118. So just because we're asking, we want to make sure everybody is on the same wavelength here. everybody do your little math right there and take 118,000 and divide it by 293. And yeah, I get 402, so pretty close to 407. And again, you might have 118 and some change. I just kind of rounded at 118, but that's a very strong student value. Obviously,
Damn.
your key there is what do you need to do to get that up to 100 instead of 118? What are you going to need to do to get to 150,000?
Close our back door and stop letting people leave.
So how many students are you going to need?
316.
Say it again.
316.
316 active is what you're saying.
No.
No.
Try
No.
360.
360?
60.
Try 360. What does that come out to?
144.
Yeah. So see, you've got to be, you're going to have to get up to now, obviously there's two ways to get to this number, right? So as high as your guys are doing, that's where I would be looking, is at least at the 350 active count before the end of the year, if not sooner, because you could be at 400 active students by the end of the year if you only had a 10 net enrollment per month. Now, what was your net enrollment last month?
It was, I should know this off the top of my head.
Do you remember how to calculate that?
8.
8. Okay. So that means if we take 8 times, this being March, and you really didn't count March yet, so that's 10 months. That means you would have 80 more students. That means you would be at, if you keep the same format that you did, and that's the enrollments and the dropout percentage, if you keep it the same, which is a net 8, that means by the end of the year, you could be at how many active students?
373.
373 times 407.
And 149. 150.
373 times 407. You're at one. See, you see what I'm saying? That you're on track at your present growth rate. At your present growth rate. Now, you want to get there faster. What do you have to do?
Fix the dropout rate.
What is your dropout percentage?
It is 6%. Or
Okay.
6% last month. This month
Okay.
is 3 or 4.
Okay, so the idea is that if we're going to get there faster, we have to get that dropout rate. And what does Master Oliver tell everybody all the time? 2 to 3% dropout rate, correct?
Less than 2.
Okay, less than 2 would be 1. I'm saying 2 to 3. If you could get that this year down to 2 to 3, which would be about half of what you are right now, which is very doable. And maybe next year you improve that, but at least this year get it down to 3. You could grow, and instead of taking 10 months to get to 150,000 a month, you could do that within 5 months, right? So this is what I'm talking about when I say know your numbers. You've got to kind of look at your numbers to see where you're at, and then play with them to see at your current rate, how long is it going to take me? Okay, am I happy with that? Or do I want to get there quicker? And if I want to get there quicker, then I've got to change. What am I going to change? I'm either going to change, get my student value higher, or I'm going to get my active count higher quicker, right? Which means that I have to get my net enrollment up quicker. Okay, thank you for sharing that. That was very helpful.
Yes, sir.
Who else has some numbers they could share with us?
Again, sorry. So we're currently at 270 active students. This month, we're projected to make 89,000 if we don't do any paid pulls. So that's averaging out to about $329 per student. We've been averaging netting about 9 new students per month. At the end of a year, that would be 106 students. Even if we kept our student value what it is now, that'd be 123,000 by next year. And our student value is going up because we've raised our prices on our leadership. So that's definitely going up.
Well, the 329 is even less than your basic program, right?
Yes.
So I'm
Yep.
going to tell you, Jason, if I was in your shoes, I would be having a party. And that doesn't mean I'm going to rest on my laurels,
Yeah.
but you're in a growth pattern of adding more than 100 students in this year, which would put you at 370. You're locked in to a student value. I would venture to say by the end of the year, no less than 400.
Yep.
And 370 at 400, we already saw that with our Florida school here. That's $150,000 school. You see where your upside is?
Yep. Yes, sir.
So what do you have to do is you have to keep your eye on the ball. See, sometimes we get so tied up with the day-to-day operations that we forget to look at the big picture and kind of focus on the numbers that are going to move us to where we want to be. And, our first goal for everybody is $1 million school. Our next goal is 100,000. Our next goal is 125 and then 150. And then we're going to work up to, that's going to get us up to the $2 million school. But I would say you've got green pastures ahead as long as you don't take your eye off the ball. That's a decent net enrollment, 10 net is okay, but what is your retention rate?
Our retention rate is about 5.5%, so we can get a lot better on that.
Yeah, you see, that's what makes it even more exciting, is that you're not even working at your full efficiency yet. Your basic program, if I remember correctly, your student value on your basic program is around 340. Is it what a basic student is paying?
350.
350, you see? And then your leadership is how much?
Now we're going up to 550.
So if you're, let's just say the older ones aren't paying that, but let's just say it's 450, 350 and 450, you're locked into a 400 student value if you just renew half your students. And so to me, you're in the driver's seat. You're in what I call the rocking chair, because, or we could say hammock there, I guess, since, do we still have our hammock on today? Did he fall?
Are you making fun of Ben again?
I think he fell out of his hammock. I don't see him there now. But you see what I'm saying is, now, easy way to self-destruct is I kind of just keep just playing it by ear and not keeping my eye that next month is getting a little better, that my retention's a little better, my net enrollment's a little better, my student value's going up. See, it gives me that look ahead to see. And next month, April, you're going to keep your eye on that ball to make sure that you should be, because if all things equal, you should be over the 100,000 mark within 5 months, no less. So awesome job. Let's give Jan and Jason both a big hand. Well, let's try one more. Who else would like to share their numbers with us?
Hey, sir.
Yes,
May I
ma'am.
say one thing? Because
Of course.
I'm really, really impressed with Jason. I think a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, he had like 63 people. And he just said 270. Did you guys hear those numbers? So anyone that says that it's not possible, there he is doing it. I mean, it's right there. So fantastic job.
Guys.
Yeah, good work, Jason, recovering from a self-inflicted wound.
And I'm gonna
You took
tell
out the
you,
We never
45,
can make him
blew off
happy,
your
no
big
matter what we
toe.
do.
now,
Got
guys,
at
we're
your
not-
left and your right foot, and then you made a great comeback.
we're not going to tell you to do what he did the way he did it.
Well,
But
hopefully that's the last pandemic until everybody
gonna
freaks
tell
out
you,
about something else.
to me, it's the comeback kid of the year. he definitely gets the Comeback Kid of the Year award because you guys that have been around know that he basically self-destructed during COVID and he basically closed his school for, and I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but I think it was almost a year, wasn't it?
Take out gun, aim at own foot.
No.
We were completely shut down for 6 months. And then
No.
the other 6 months, we just didn't have people coming in.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yep. But it
That's
is-
okay. When I was there, Jason told me why he did it. He said,
Well, no, let's just not go there.
I'm gonna
Let's
go
just
there.
not go there.
I'm
It's
sorry.
not going to happen again.
No,
there's
no,
no more-
no, listen, this is a warning for everybody. He said
Okay.
he did it to give everybody a chance, that he was going to beat everybody, but he said, I'm going to handicap it. He said, I'm going to show these new guys coming on board that have less than 100 students that you can be $1 million school in 18 months. And I'm going to prove it to them because I'm going to get rid of all my students and start at 50 just to show them how to do it, because I want to lead by example for my.
Interesting
newer
story
school.
does not have the benefit of being true, but we can move on. Okay.
One last
Um,
one. Anybody else want to share their numbers with us?
I'll do it, sir.
Okay, we're ready.
All right, sir. So we're at 370 students, a student value of 290, and we're net around 11 students per month.
I like that. And what was that? Was that from last month?
This is for March.
Okay. And what is your gross for March?
It's going to be 108.
Okay. Right now, on those numbers you gave me, that's 78,300.
370 times
370 active.
Oh, I'm
times
sorry.
290.
370 active. My bad.
Yes, sir.
So 370 times 290.
108.
That's 107,300.
It was 291. I just rounded it down to make
Okay.
it a number.
Okay, no problems. So around 108. That's awesome. Now, is that 2 schools or 1 school?
That's all schools together.
Okay, so that's 3 schools. Now,
Yes, sir.
here's what I want you to do. Because sometimes it will make you whole, think you're doing better than you're doing. I want you to have a whole total number, but I also want you to have each individual school, because what your goal, MJ, is to have each school be $1 million school.
Yeah.
And each school to reach 100,000. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, starting with 3 combined at over 100,000, that's a marker for you. But sometimes when you hear the other schools, because Jan, we're talking single school, Jason, we're talking single school. So I want you to make sure your guys understand that one school isn't taking credit for the other school. So when I put those numbers together, that's just for me, the school owner, to look at, but I'm looking for them. I'm just looking at their individual numbers and comparing them against each other,
Yes, sir.
because that's how you learn from each other. I don't want one school, doing better numbers and the other one I'm gonna reprimand. No, we're just we want to see who's our leader
Well-
and who we're gonna follow. So we got to keep duplicating what our best school's doing, and we want that best school. So your goal for those 3 schools is to see who's going to be the $1 million school first, who's going to hit that 80,000 mark first.
Well,
And-
Matt Smith, if I might add to that, is if I were you, MJ, what I would do is I would take an aggressive personal interest in whichever one is closest to the goal line and push it up to be 100,000 a month.
Yes, sir.
And trying to pull all 3 of them up at once is much more difficult than going in and focusing time, energy, and resources on one. And, in this case, you end up with one school that ends up doing as much revenue as the 3 were doing to combine before. What that'll do is it'll bring everybody up at least 50% just by seeing the example of what's going on there.
Makes sense, sir.
Yeah, I mean, and that's always what I have found, I found with 5 or 6 or 3, trying to get them all up at the same time. I mean, you're looking at the numbers and you're working on the marketing and all that stuff. But if you take one and zip it to the moon, and then you go take whatever the worst of the 3 is and do the same thing to it, right? Because the one that you zip way up, it's going to stay more or less there. Then you get the one that's in the last place school, get it there. And that might be the way to do it to begin with. But if it were me, I would start with whoever's closest to the goal line, whichever one is clicking along best, and push it over 100,000 a month. And then I would take the one that's doing the worst and push it over to 100,000 a month. And that'll get the entire organization to really start humming along.
Awesome, sir. That definitely gives me some direction.
And guys,
That's-
the
Yeah.
real key here is to make sure that if you're going to be $1 million school, you have to look at we don't have anybody that's ever become $1 million school without getting their renewals going. Now, I'm going to tell you, those percentages should be in the 60-40. Take that total gross you have, at least 60% of that should be coming from renewals, 40% from enrollments. And if you're not at least 60% of your total gross at renewals, then you're way behind where you need to be. So do take that, because the key to being $1 million school is to get these renewals going, because just having students for 1 year, if they don't renew, we know that we're going to have to replace all those schools, all those students every year, because it's just like a treadmill. 100 come in, 100 go out. But if we renew them, then we know they're going to be there 4 to 6 years. So the key to growing the $1 million school is the renewals. That's the biggie. But in the process, I have to know where I'm at to know where I'm going. Well, obviously, if the student value is going up, that won't go up over 300 or more unless you've got your renewals going. So it usually takes care of itself just by knowing those numbers. But do a quick test on yourself. If your percentages are down, your active count is down. If your student value is down low, it's in the 200, low 200s, then that tells you that you don't have enough renewals. So that means that I've got to get those renewals, because, Master Oliver has always said to you guys, one of the best retention tools you have is to renew them, that they're less likely. Now, you still have to take care of them and you still have to do attendance and all that, but you renew them, we have a good shot at keeping them. We don't renew them, we guarantee that they will drop out. The question is, when in that first year are they going to drop out if they don't renew? Is it 2 months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? But if they don't renew 100%, they're dropping out. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I needed, Master Oliver. Thank you.
Well, and Master Smith, I was going to add to that very quickly. And MJ, the multi-school lessons, what Master Smith did for the Junior Institute, and then to a great extent for his own chain of schools, what I did for my schools, when you come into the actual operations day to day, where I would be in doing enrollments and renewals, is it fell into 2 categories. It was startups and turnarounds. And my rule of thumb personally was, when I wasn't excited about the overall numbers, is I would go into whatever the worst school was and make it the best school. And usually that was tripling or more the results. And everybody else would follow suit, right? Because if you have, let's say in your case, if you have one school that's doing 60,000 a month and another school is doing 25,000, people kind of think that that's just because of the location, or that particular school does better or whatever. But if you go in and you take the one that's doing 25 and you make it to 100, then everybody else's numbers are going to come up, if through no other reason, through their own level of embarrassment on having their ass kicked, right? But it sets a new higher standard, Now, what I was recommending earlier is to take the best one and push it over the goal line, but then take the worst one and push it over the goal line. For the very specific reason is whichever one's clicking along best, it's going to be easier to get it from wherever it's at to 110 than it is to take the worst one and fix it, right? But Matt Smith, what I was going to jump in on earlier, and you just said it, I'm going to reinforce it about 12 different ways. What we found out in Florida was that everyone, I think without exception, were underemphasizing renewing people at white belt, were failing to have the first 8 to 10 lessons be an extended introductory process where they set the goal and committed to train to black belt and beyond right then and there. And number 3, we're massively undercharging for their highest level program. And again, what I find a lot of times is we'll end up with people who say, well, I don't do 2 levels because everybody I ask does the one I'm doing, so I got rid of the lower level. Well, every time I've heard that explanation, it was because they were massively undercharging for the higher level program. And in fact, needed a fallback position because they needed to push that top level price up so that more people would fall back to the lower level. Every time I've tried to do that, by the way, I've never seen less than somewhere between 75 and 90% still doing the most expensive program, right? So if I add 200 a month to what it is now, you've got to be careful on how the presentation is. I don't see her on the meeting today, but we were going through Amanda Christensen's renewal conference presentation because their numbers had slipped. And what I found was they were going through the renewal conference and kind of like hitting them with the big number rather than walking them into it, right? And what I mean by that is if I'm charging $349 a month for a trial enrollment, and I'm charging another $300 or $250 for the renewal, I'm going to walk them through and I'm going to say the leadership program is an additional $249 a month. I'm not going to say the leadership program is $700 a month, right? So I'm going to give them the increment. Same thing is true when it comes to the initial tuition. I'm going to do it one at a time. I'm not going to hit them with the leadership program is $35,000. I'm not going to hit them with it's $1,500 today and $700 a month. I'm going to go walk them through one at a time. Is, we at the higher level program, there are a couple options. Most of our parents prefer the leadership program because it includes this, and this. The leadership program ends up being about $300 a month on top of what the current program is. Is that going to work for the budget? Yes, no. That gives me an ability to fall back if I need to. But then once I'm at that point, I can, get an agreement. We're going to move forward one thing or another. And they'll say, typically we do initially $1,500 to get started on that. Is that going to work for the budget today? Yes or no, right? And if they say no, I say, okay, well, what would work? Oh, I could do half of that. Okay, no problem. Let's do it that way, right? But I'm going to do one step at a time. I'm not going to show them the big number. I'm not going to show them the total number. I'm not going to get bogged down into the initial number. I'm going to vary. And again, we're all martial artists. Think of it as soft style, not hard style, right? Is instead of blocking back and ending up in a conversation or an argument, I'm always okay, no problem, and working through to the next thing to get to where we can go with it, right? Again, I want the sales process, including finalizing the tuition, to be as smooth and simple, calm and relaxed as possible. I don't want it to end up with a tense, and I certainly don't want to end up with negotiation. I see a lot of people who do sales training end up doing a lot of negotiation training. Well, that's not what we're doing, right? This isn't I'm building an apartment complex. This is, I'm enrolling a student to a new higher level for something that's beneficial for them. And I want to make it as smooth and easy and painless for them as possible. But the other thing, Matt Smith, is that what we know is we should be able to renew at least 50% but our target should be more like 80 or 90% of white belts before they get to that first belt. I'm assuming that it's in a couple of months. So that first 2-month period is essential. And when we start looking at renewal percentages, the number I'm using, the number Master Smith and Master Moody are using are how many enrollments did I do? How many of those did we renew? The number that we're not talking about, although we should keep track of it, is how many conferences did I do and how many of them renewed? And what I hear sometimes is people say, well, I'm closing 80%. Okay, well, how many did you enroll? I'm enrolling 20 a month. How many conferences did you have? 5. Okay, so you renewed 4 out of 5 that you talked to, but 15 out of 20 you didn't talk to. That's a problem, right? What we want the number to be is I'm enrolling 20 on an average month and I'm renewing 15, maybe 16.